the argument from LaLiga's side is, look, this is what we're doing. Whenever this happens, we are gathering the evidence, we're passing it on to prosecutors who can then look to bring charges against these individuals. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that in several of these cases, we've seen prosecutors deciding not to take any further action, not to press charges, not to pursue a case, either because they say there isn't enough evidence, or one bizarre case after some similar chanting ahead of the Madrid derby earlier in the season, prosecutors decided not to press charges, saying that it hadn't reached the level necessary to be a criminal offence, even though this was a crowd of people singing "Vinicius, you are a monkey." So you're seeing these prosecutors not sort of dropping the ball and not taking these cases further. So if that's happening, and if that keeps happening, and it's happened on numerous occasions, what needs to happen? Well, the league needs to take further action, and the clubs need to take further action. Now, in fairness, some clubs have done that. We've seen that from clubs like Real Mallorca, like Real Valladolid, where we've seen some of these racist incidents involving Vinicius over the last year. They've identified fans and they've banned fans. And Valencia today came out and said that they will ban fans for life who are identified as having been involved here. One fan has already been identified by police, and they're working on identifying others. So some clubs are taking action. But like I say, this keeps happening. And yes, it's a bigger problem. Of course, it's a bigger problem about Spanish society, and racism is an issue in Spain. But there's still more, I think, that football could be doing to control what it can control, which is what happens inside these stadiums.
I think by Javier Tebas's rhetoric alone, multiple times his position to me should be untenable. Now, I presume he's got a boss or a committee or people who put him in place and the place that he's in. But this is a guy who gets a bee in his bonnet when other leagues spend money, and he perceives that to be outspending what his league and his teams and the teams within his organisation can spend, and a lack of sporting integrity. He has a bee in his bonnet about that. He has a bee in his bonnet, and I remember when Barcelona were having all their problems and they're still working their way through it, and they were bringing Lewandowski in. Oh, he was out chiming about the potential signing of Lewandowski and how Barcelona were going to be able to do this, and they can't sign Lewandowski, they need to do this and they need to do that. He's very active in all these other matters. But yet, he'll make a statement on all these racist incidents, and as you said, he'll pass on the relevant complaints and information to the legal authorities and the police for criminal prosecutions. But his league, the governing body of these teams, is doing nothing about it, basically doing nothing about it. And I think that makes his position, in my view, untenable. When it's a bigger problem for other countries to be spending money, it's a bigger problem for teams within his league to be potentially outspending their budget. He's worried about that, but he's not worried about the continuous racist problems that a lot of these players, but particularly these Real Madrid players, particularly Vinicius Jr, and I think Rodrigo's had some as well, and I'm thinking about the effigy at one point a few months ago off a bridge and all that sort of stuff. Come on. We cannot sit here and continually have the same conversation with the same outcome. It is not fair on these players to have to... This is not the early 1900s. It's not fair on these players to have to go through this scenario in the current climate, 2023, that we're in. We should be in a situation now where these things are just being dealt with in a much more proper manner than which they are. Not just through the criminal proceedings, but through the power that LaLiga should have to bring some sort of sanctions on the clubs and not allow the clubs themselves to say, oh, we'll deal with this. Don't you worry about it, we've got it. And I just don't think, and I know every league is different, but I do not think that is good enough or acceptable.
And to that point, we'll go to Shaka in a moment. Alex, I just wanted to talk about what La Liga have the power to do. I understand when it comes to criminal prosecution, that is out of their hands. That's what we talk about giving it to the authorities. But surely they could, for example, close a stand, or they could deduct points for racist behaviour, or chuck you out of the Copa del Rey, make a real statement. That's got nothing to do with criminal. That's to do with football, isn't it? And surely they have the powers within them to do that?
Well, ultimately, La Liga is an association of the clubs that make it up, and they can get together and decide to take the action that they want to take in terms of partial stadium closures or stadium closures. Other issues would fall under the competence of the Spanish Football Federation. So something like the Copa del Rey that you mentioned, that's the Spanish Football Federation's competition. So that would be more problematic. But there are absolutely things that La Liga and the clubs could get together and decide to put into place. Of course, the issue for some of these clubs is, do they really want to follow through on that, and how drastic would the consequences be if they were really looking at stand closures or stadium closures? Would the clubs be willing to take that kind of drastic action? But the bottom line is, the image of La Liga globally is being damaged so badly by discussions like this, and similar discussions like this are happening on in the media all over the world right now. I think that damage is huge, and this could be happening with any player, and it would be serious if it was happening with any player. But it just happens that it's happening with the brightest young star in La Liga, and maybe the most exciting player to watch in world football right now, Vinicius Jr. And so, for the league as well, even just thinking about the league's kind of own interests, let alone sort of talking about kind of justice and what is right, they need to protect this star, this huge asset that they've got, even in their own interests, let alone anything else. And so, like I say, maybe now and maybe this time we're going to see further steps being taken. But it's a difficult one, and it's like I say, there are some issues around exactly what they can do. But ultimately, the clubs and the league can get together, and if they wanted to, they could take much more drastic action for sure.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.